I call this Divrei Hesped rather than Hesped because in truth, I don't feel fitting really to deliver a Hesped, and that there's going to be no doubt mass Hespedim in the next days and weeks to come. But I simply didn't feel able to give my regular share this morning, hence the switch to just some brief words of Hesped. I didn't feel able to give my regular share because of the enormous sense of both personal and communal loss at the Patira of Dayan Ehrentreu, and also a deep sense of pain and grief. And I just really wanted to use this slot as the first sort of share opportunity I had to just share some words of memory and recollection. I'm conscious that there are many who knew him far better than I did, and for far longer. And really, what I can say is simply a small snippet of my own few years of interaction with him. And certainly, it's not an attempt to say anything definitive. And also, I'm conscious of those who didn't know him or didn't have such immediate contact with him, many of whom perhaps are a little puzzled at this sort of outpouring of grief. And I just felt it's appropriate, therefore, to share what we have lost, a little perspective, a small perspective of what we have lost, and also a little bit of the depth of gratitude that I think communally, by that I mean our Kehillah, but I mean, of course, way beyond that, and personally that I feel, and the terrible vacuum and loss that has occurred with the Patira of Dayan Ehrentreu. Before I say anything else, obviously, just to give words of Nechama to the Rebbetzin, to Dayan Ehrentreu's children. His Rebbetzin stood by his side for all the years that I saw, and many more years before that, answering her front door with chein, with welcome, and herself being a person of incredible wisdom and insight, and really the rock and the support upon which Dayan Ehrentreu leaned and enabled him to achieve so much with his life and with his days, an incredible amount. And obviously wish her Nechama from the memory of the Dayan and everything that he was, and Nachas from her wonderful family. I'm sure many others have said this, and because of my travel last week, I wasn't able to hear whatever words were said. Obviously, it was Rish Chodesh. There wasn't an opportunity for full words of Hesped. But the words at the end of the Haftorah that we just read are so appropriate, beyond appropriate for Dayan Ehrentreu. He was of course a Kohen, and the Haftorah is addressing the role of the Kohen, the teacher of Klal Yisrael. Torah's emes ha'isa b'fihu, a Torah of truth was in his mouth, but avla lo nimtza b'sfasov, and falsehood, dishonesty wasn't found in his lips. Shalom of v'meisha halachiti, he walked with Hashem in ways of peace and uprightness. Rabim Hashem Oven, and he turned many away from sin. Kistifse Kohen Yishmu Das, because from the lips of a Kohen, knowledge is guarded. For Torah Vakshu Mipiu, and Torah one seeks from his mouth. Kimalach Hashem Tzvakasu, because he was a malach, an angel, a messenger of Hashem. And I was thinking about this pasuk the whole time after I heard about Dayan Ehrentreu's Patira. And in my state of upset and travelled last week, I didn't have a chance to look at Haftorah before Shabbos, and then we began reading Haftorah, and we got to this pasuk, and I realised this was the pasuk that of course encapsulates so much of what he was. This pasuk at the end of that Torah. He was a leader, or a rabbinic leader, a posek, halachic authority, a source of advice and wisdom for a vast array of people, for years, for decades, and a mentor for so many other Rabbonim. His knowledge of halacha and his insight was unbelievable. I mean, in a moment, part of the greatness of Dayan Ehrentreu was the many worlds which he mixed with and with which he interacted, and yet through everything he did, there was always a complete purity of Torah and a purity of hashkafa and a clarity of vision. He led so many mosdos, obviously primarily the Botei Din, the Manchester-based in, the London-based in, the European-based in, and navigated them through rocky waters often, where there was balancing acts that need to be found, and yet always stood fast in the standards of kashrus, of kedushin, of gittin, of gerus, and always preserved that clarity of halacha and hashkafa. He was an incredible posek, and maybe this wasn't realized always. I had the honor of asking many shilas in my first years back in England of Dayan Chanoch Ehrentreu Zts. And Dayan Chanoch was well known as an expert in many areas of halacha, including in some of the shilas I was coming to him at the time, dealing with aspects of the broader community and the world of Bali Tshuva and so on. And I remember once asking him a shayla about a particular matter, and he said this is a very difficult topic. It has to go to the Gedolim, has to be taken to one of the Gedolim. So I said to him, who should one go to? Sort of picturing a trip to Eretz Yisrael, perhaps, and speaking to one of the poskim there. And he thought for a moment, said, take it to Dayan Ehrentreu. So I said, well, Dayan Ehrentreu is one of the Gedolim, and so of course, like, he didn't know what I wanted. And over the years, obviously, as I saw a little bit the interactions he had with Rabbi Yashiv, with Rav Vosner, heard about the interactions he has had with Rabbi Zobin, and saw how the most senior and well-known poskim in Klal Yisrael saw him as from the Gedolei poskim. He wrote or gave many psakim. Most widely spread is a book of guidance that he wrote for doctors and nurses and others in the medical field. Now isn't the time for a sort of a mini shir on the halachas of medicine, other than to say that this was a work of Torah importance, and a hachra in Pesach, in which, again, without going into detail, he had the vision to conclude that, and the godless and the confidence of the posek to conclude that the need for there to be medical professions is something that was necessary for Darkei Shalom, something necessary for the interaction of Klal Yisrael in the world, and the confidence, therefore, to base Pesach and halacha as to how medical professions, even in training, should navigate the field in a wonderful way. On that note, he had an incredible confidence, a confidence in Pesach and a confidence in life. Someone wrote to me after he was nifta, a man malki rabbanon. It's Gemara in Gittin, a slight misquote of Gemara in Gittin, but the Gemara there says that a true rav is someone who's a melech, who has authority and true authority, and he knew how to exercise authority. He was an aristocratic person himself, and he came from an aristocracy of the Torah world, both in terms of his own yichus to generations of leaders in the world of German Jewry, in terms of his Talmidim. He was the Rebbe through the Sunderland Kollel and other sources of numerous Rabbonim and Rosh Yeshiva, and by marriage he was related to the world of Brisk, his brother-in-law Rabbi David Soloveitchik, to the world of the poskim in Eretz Yisrael of the Chareidis, Rabbi Moshe Steinbach was his brother-in-law, to the world of yeshivas, Rabbi Sharieli, who was his nephew. So sort of he was really from the aristocracy of the Torah world. And he had confidence once he made up his mind, and once he came to a halachic conclusion. That was it. He had the ability to press it through. I mean, within our own kehillah, we're aware, of course, of his involvement in building of the Northwest Mountain Eruv, and we'll talk more a little bit about that contribution, the incredible contribution to Anglo Jewry that came out of that. He was confident both in the Chumrah and Kula. He came under a lot of pressure, famously around the issues of limud and the like. And again, he took his view and stuck to it. I mentioned already this book of medical halacha that he wrote, again with enormous confidence as a posek, and yet really something that set the gold standard for so many medical practitioners as to how to balance what they needed to do. And yet the other Ma'amar Chazal that springs to mind, despite this enormous confidence, is Tamei Chachamim Marbim Shalom Ba'olam, because he balanced that confidence with an ability to bring shalom. And again, there were a few occasions where I witnessed his ability to sort out machlokas and to mediate and to resolve issues. I'll speak a little bit more about his personality later, but he shared the middle of his ancestor Aaron HaKohen of O Shalom Roda Shalom, and was able to bring shalom and peace when he was dealing with issues. Again, almost paradoxically, combined with his enormous confidence, was an incredible anova and modesty. I remember watching with awe when Ramosha Shapiro, Talmud Chacham from Talmud Chacham, an enormous Talmud Chacham, a great Talmud Chacham, arrived from Eretz Yisrael on many occasions and taught a chelek of Torah of Machshava and areas of Nista and so on that Dayan Chanoch clearly wanted to learn from. And I remember sitting watching him like a young Talmud. He sat in the front row when Ramosha Shapiro came, and he sat there writing notes and listening and afterwards. And then it was over, and people sort of stepped forward to ask Ramosha Shapiro questions. And Dayan Chanoch, who at the time was in his 70s at the time, stepped forward like a Talmud, sort of waiting to ask him for clarification and questions. And it was just an amazing sight to see these two wonderful Talmidei Chachamim, and just to see Dayan Chanoch willing to behave like a young Talmud in an area of I later saw actually some of the notes on his bookshelf. I mean, he was happy to be a Talmud of others when he saw someone as having Torah that he could learn from them, which was an incredible thing. I mean, so many people had the experience in which he would phone them up to ask their opinion on things and speak to them. There were times when he would contact me and I know many others and say, what do you think about this? And he used to listen to other voices to try and help him make up a mind, which was an incredible thing. And he empowered others also. Again and again, this is something people hear, people who the young Rabbanim had the privilege of a connection to him and to whom he was a mentor. He used to empower and encourage. Again, he recognized that there were aspects of Shiloh's, again, that was asking him at the time, where there was no way he could understand every detail of the system, and he used to say, just use your own wisdom, and he had that ability to empower. He also had an incredible bittul hadas to those that he saw as his seniors in halacha. And I remember once speaking to him about the very, very complicated issue of organ donation, which is really Shiloh's and Pekuach Nefesh. And it dawned upon me that the Dayan quite strongly felt a certain sad in halacha in this Shiloh, and I'm not going to go into the details now is not the time to place, but he had a certain opinion on the matter. So, which I was a little surprised about because it wasn't in line with how I had understood he had been paskening. So I said, Dayan, are you the Dayan paskens X? And he stood up like this in shock, and he said, Chas v'shalom. Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Yashir said, why? And it was sort of obvious to him that despite his clear own svara in a particular dimension, in a particular way, that it was completely obvious to him. He was almost shocked and bothered that I would even suggest that he would paskin in this area against those that he saw as great authorities in this particular topic or in every topic, I don't know. And at a time when one sees sort of people voicing opinions left, right, and centre, people who are competent or moderate, for me, it was such a privilege to see someone like him who was really at the peak of the ability to paskin, at the same time as having this enormous confidence, also recognizing there were areas in which he was mevatel dat and didn't consider his opinion to be of great enough significance. He has an incredible love of Torah, and a Mesiras Nefesh, as I said, for the positions that he adopted. His delight when he was giving a shir was, I think anyone who remembers that it was incredible. The simcha that he had in every word of Torah, as much simcha he could have as a deep and profound pilpul in halacha, as in Evat. Sometimes there are occasions where he finds himself saying the same Torah or teaching it to different audiences again and again, and every time the same simcha sachayim, with an incredible warmth and love and avas HaTorah. The number of initiatives of building Torah institutions that he was involved in, from the Sunderland Kollel, well before my time many years ago, to the Edra Kollel, which I had the privilege of watching from the inside how he built that, and the Boron Wood Kollel, and the evening Kollel that he had in his house. I mean, who builds a Kollel outside their own community and dedicates enormous effort to seed Torah in Edgware and then later in Boron Wood? And you know, it was so obvious to everyone as he began putting together plans to build Kollel. This was going to be a hands-on Kollel, perhaps based in his shul or based in his own kehillah. And yet who does that? Who puts in that enormous effort to build something far from home because of a vision? And incidentally, who has the fundraising ability to convince their supporters and their balabatim to invest in something so far from home because of a vision of spreading a young, dynamic Torah community northwards into Edra and then beyond that in Boron Woods. And this took Messias Nefesh. It took effort. It wasn't effortless for him. But the love, the burning love that he felt for Torah was something phenomenal. It's also important to mention, by the way, that he had an incredible Messias Nefesh for Torah. And again, I only saw a little bit of this, but I remember at the time of the whole controversy, again, now it's not time for the halachic discussion, around Kohanim going on aeroplanes over the route that they were taking to Ben Gurion, and with the issues of going over Batei Graz and on. And he was confident and open to the idea, and himself, I think, did so, of this sitting in a bag at the time. And there was a lot of fun poked in the media at the concept of a Kohen having to wrap themselves in a large bag. And from his point of view, I think this is really important, because we saw sometimes one side of Dayan Ehrentreu, and I will speak about that soon. This incredible ability to connect to everyone, to be relatable to accommodate, to really work on trying to use halacha and Torah as an enabler for people to live a life of halacha in an easy way and in a comfortable way. And yet he was also completely willing to be Moshe Nefesh and in some ways make himself a laughing stock when he felt that was appropriate, if this was necessary in halacha. And again, just the stature of the clarity and cleanliness of his Torah was an example. I mentioned already, just talking a little bit about his personality, he has an incredible simchas achayim and a joy of life, his humor, his warmth, his infectious smile. That's his ability to radiate joy and love. He had a simchas achayim, and he also enjoyed life. And again, he was a Talmid Chacham. He taught that being a Yorei Shemaim, being having fear of halacha, of Hashem, and the ability to sacrifice halacha, doesn't mean that one can't also have an incredible simchas chayim and enjoyment of life. He was a bal chesed in an extraordinary way, both in the large-scale things that he did and institutions that he built, but also on a very personal level. He was engaged in exceptional kindness, giving hours and hours to people who were broken, who needed chizuk and needed encouragement. I never asked him this, but I think his role as a moihel and in Milah, beyond the fact that he was a very important halachic authority around Milah and used it to raise the standards of Milah, both halachically and in terms of medical care, I think he just saw it as a chesed also, as an opportunity for chesed. And again, where else do you find an Av Beis Din of a massive Beis Din dealing with enormous issues, doing Milah and going around and giving aftercare and looking after people is just it's just unbelievable. I mentioned already his dignity and his malchus. Even in the last difficult years, as one came into his room there, and he wasn't easily able to communicate by that stage. Again, the care that his Rebbetzin gave him was extraordinary, and certainly allowed that to happen. But one felt radiating out of him this malchus, this dignity, this aristocracy, this love, this warmth. That glowed out of him. I mentioned the pasuk in Malachi earlier, which the Gemara is Dorish, Gemara in Chagigan and Gemara in Moed Katan. That one's Rav, one's Rebbe should be in one's eyes. Kamalach Hashem Tzvakas. That's the language of the pasuk. And there was a sense of not just malchus, kingship, but malachus, of an angelic nature to him. Of his a malach is a mission, someone with a mission, and a shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he certainly embodied that. He loved people. It was very, very clear he loved people. He had so much on his shoulders, and the weighty issues he was dealing with across Europe. Very, very difficult questions around yichus and around medical ethics and many other things. And yet when you spoke to him, you felt that there was no stress at all. He just had time. He had all the time in the world. He used to ask people how they were doing, and he sort of had a detailed knowledge of people's lives. He used to remember what was going on in their lives and inquire about them. He had this very penetrating look. It was sort of a bit scary, actually. He sort of looked you in the eye, and you felt that you were the sole focus of his attention for those few minutes. And during that time, he sort of conveyed love and warmth and care and for everyone. I think, by the way, his care for Yiddishkeit and the stance of Yiddishkeit also came from that love. It came from Yerei Shamayim, and it was from the Gedolei HaPoskim, as I said. It also came from a love. He just wanted everyone to have the best, and he saw his ability to give halacha and teach halacha and paskin as a way of giving everyone the best. I remember once meeting him on on Brent Street, and near shul there, and he said to me, "How are you? Feeling better?" So I'd been out of action for a week with like a heavy cold, nothing very serious. So I said, "Yeah, how does the Dayan know I was unwell?" She said, "Because I was at Simcha last night, and you weren't there." And I thought, "Why wouldn't you be there? It's not the time of the year when you go away. It's the middle of the school term. So it must be that you're under the weather." So, and I was just sort of, and I think people that knew him again and again, he sort of had that sort of a care and attention to individual detail, where it was sort of like a Charlotte Pope type thing, where he, but care coming out of love, and where he sort of noticed everyone, and as I said, he spoke to everyone, he asked opinions from everyone. I had the privilege of speaking at the bar mitzvah of my sons, and every bar mitzvah in his kehillah, outside his kehillah, he used to just the love he felt to the children, to the members of his kehillah in particular, his famously his einiklach, as he used to refer to them, his grandchildren. I think everyone felt that, and he despite his, or perhaps because of his stature as a Talmid Chacham and as a posek, his ability to be non-judgmental was incredible. He could balance the objective truths of Torah, and the psak that he held was the psak, with a very, very firm line and great clarity. At the same time, completely non-judgmental of those who disagreed with him or didn't live up to the standards of halacha that he felt. I had the privilege of once being involved in I don't want to go into too many details, but not that many years ago, 5 or so years ago, he was attacked very strongly by someone in a terrible way, and the person later wanted to ask mechila and was very, very ashamed to approach Dayan Ehrentreu to ask mechila. And he asked me to be sort of a broker, and I spoke to Dayan Ehrentreu. He sort of didn't understand the need for a broker in this situation. He said that he'd be mochel the person instantly, and he said, like, reassuring me. And I said, "I think he'll feel better if he comes and speaks to the Dayan." He said, "Welcome, come to the Dayan." I gave him a hug, and it was just very unusual behavior. The Dayan wasn't just the whole way he gave him that mechila. And in fact, this person wrote to me just a few nights ago, just saying thank you that you facilitated that. And I said I didn't facilitate him. He had this ability to just forgive and move on. I said already he had an interest in everyone and every individual. For many years, I used to accompany Rav Kimchi to the Mechios Chometz, which he used to do together with Dayan Ehrentreu, and I kept that tradition up till unfortunately it wasn't possible anymore. And the person that was used for many years was the manager of one of the Jewish institutions, and one year he told the Dayan that he was retiring, and this would be his last year as being able to help Mechios Chometz. I mean, he wasn't just retiring from Mechios Chometz; he was retiring from his role. And again, I mean, the Dayan's interest, he was asking what his retirement plans are, investments, and where he was going to live and what he was going to do. And the Dayan was telling him it's very important that you find things to do, otherwise retirement can be very unhealthy. He said, "What are your interests?" And he was trying to talk through with him how he would sort of keep himself healthy in retirement and what this person would do. It's just again, I think everyone felt so special, and I think part of the wave of grief that's across West London is because anyone who came in contact with him felt they had a special relationship with him. That was the nature of the role. He gave chizuk to Rabbonim, and there were occasions in my own short Rabbodis where for whatever reason things were difficult or people were critical of various things, and he gave an incredible chizuk. He knew how to relate to across the range of Anglo Jewry, and his role as Rosh Basin on our basin, he was responsible not just for the Kehillas of Northwest London of Henton, but for the whole of Anglo Jewry, and his ability again to connect and relate and understand what it means to come from a world. He grew up in the world of German Orthodoxy, and went through Kristallnacht and emerged from that. And he was someone who came from real rabbinic nobility, and yet his ability to connect to every individual and every person and understand them and their backgrounds, and to be present when they went through good times, when they went through bad times, to be there by their sides, was remarkable. Another Rav told me that they once asked him about how they said to him, as they were Rav of a traditional shul, said, "How should I encourage and grow my members in their ruchnius when they're not people who are sort of automatically connected to halacha?" And he quoted the words of davening that we say, "Gomel chasodim tovim v'konei hakol." So if you're gomel chasodim tovim, if you love people, if you look after people, then you can achieve anything. And that was really so much his what he stood for, his ethos and what he was. I just want to just mention the little bit of the sort of contribution to Klal Yisrael that he made. And again, I only know a tiny fraction of it, but just to think what he gave us, because I don't think people realise that the degree to which so much of what we have. I mentioned obviously already the London based in and his ability to ensure that it stayed a based in that on the one hand could be connected to and serve the wider community, and on the other hand be absolutely true to halacha. He was our based in the Manchester based in. He was our based in of the European based in, dealing with very, very fraught issues. As the Iron Curtain fell and East European Jewry, Russian Jewry began emerging and spreading across Europe, there were numerous questions around how to re-engage them and reconnect them with Yiddishkeit, with Yichus, and proving people had really been out of the sort of connection with Klal Yisrael for 70, 80, 90 years, determining their status in halacha. I mentioned already he was the Rosh Kollel of Sunderland, and that was at the time a training school for so many Dayanim and Rosh Yeshivas and Rabbanim. Dayan Lopin was his Talmud from that time. Dayan Amar was the Talmud from the time. So many people that emerged from this. I mentioned already his role in the Northwest Erev, but out of that Northwest Erev and the energy and effort and attention to detail and hachra and halacha and pasuk that he put into it, emerged the whole swathe of Erevin now across the whole of the sort of slice of all the way radiating out from central London and St John's Wood through to Hampstead and on through obviously to Barnet, to Golders Green and Hendon, and out to Mill Hill and Stanmore and Edgware and Boreham Wood and Elstree, and the whole trickle down effect of the Erevin that he built. He was instrumental and a posek for Chana, the fertility charity, and Psak for Nachas Ruach, for the therapists and psychologists professional body, for Shema Kodi. He was involved in, as we know, in calling out abuse in the community and abusers, and again did so at considerable personal pain and sacrifice to himself, but was a leader in that. He was instrumental in the 2003 Act of Parliament in that's connected with Argunas in preventing people being able to get a civil divorce if they hadn't given a get. I mentioned already he founded the Edgware Kollel, the Boreham Wood Kollel, caring for spreading the opportunity for spreading really strengthening Jewish communities well beyond his own. His net was really spread over Europe. While I was still living in Eretz Yisrael, I had the privilege of being involved and working very closely with him over a project that was set up and envisaged by him to strengthen Jewry in Warsaw. So living in Hendon, he was worrying about the community in Warsaw. Now's again not the time to talk about the difficult situation in Poland, but the community, for lots of reasons, was very weak, and he saw and envisaged the need to rebuild Warsaw and invested an enormous amount of time and effort into that. He was involved in leading and advising so many of the Torah institutions that existed. And as I said, he trained Dayanim, Rabbanim, Rosh Yeshivas, teachers, Moelim, Sheikhtim, the lay leadership of the Jewish community. His contribution, again, just in terms of what he did, what was unbelievable. He had an incredible wisdom. He paid attention, as I said, to each individual with patience and time. And again, when one was asking him eight, I think one never felt that there was a rush. He listened, he asked questions, he analysed, he checked he had understood, and repeated back. And it never seemed inconvenient for him. When one needed Eitzah, he always made everyone feel totally at ease. His depth of wisdom came from a depth of Torah knowledge. He had incredible knowledge of Torah, love of Torah, as I said, a confidence in Psak, an Avas Abrius, incredible love for people, a patience to give Eitzah like he did. It took a tremendous patience, a clarity of Hashkafa, a strength, a modesty. All of that was combined in his ability to give Eitzah. I was once. This is going back. Going back 17 years or so. He called me in and asked me about someone who he felt was in a position that this person was somewhat unsuitable for, and he was collating information at the time. And this was not a bad person in any way at all. Just they were in a position that they really weren't playing to their strengths and weren't able to offer effective leadership. And he listened to everything. And at the end of it, he said, okay, he's going to address this issue, but he has to do it in a way that will give cover to this person, and it's going to take time. Anyway, this person remained in their position for 10 years following that conversation. And I wondered if he had forgotten or decided to leave. I always wondered what happened. And then in a very swift series of events, Dayan Ehrentreu stepped into a particular event going on and moved this person to a new position. And he found a position that he felt was no insult to this individual, that was what respected their coverage, which they deserved. And it was very, very surprising at the time. There was a lot of talk at the time about why he so swiftly moved this person into a new position. And I was just blown away by it was over 10 years, actually, the gap. It was about 11 years from when he had determined that this person shouldn't and couldn't stay too long in that position, to finding the opportunity to do so with
yeah, it's beautiful, this new one.
Mute everyone. Finding the opportunity to do so with covered and respect. And again, I mean, who has the patience to deal with an issue and keep it on their minds for more than a decade in order to balance the genuine needs of this institution to find different leadership on the one hand, and on the other hand, balance that. And I'm not talking about the particular scenario. Every situation is different. Sometimes for the health institution, one needs to move someone on faster. In this particular situation, he came to a conclusion and could wait for 12 years to do that. I mentioned his modesty before in his eights. I mean, the very first thing, to the best of my recollection, after I assumed Kehillah Rabbanus, I think the very first thing he said to me was, know your limitations and know the things that you can't do as much as the things that you can do. And then he said to me, he said, know that a Rav is not a therapist, a Rav is not a doctor, a Rav is not a scientist. He said, know what you can and what you can't do. And understand that your role can often be to signpost, can often be to listen, often be to support, but know the difference between, don't fall into the trap of thinking you have professional expertise where you don't. And he said, listen to the lawyers in your Kehillah, listen to the doctors in the community, listen to the accountants in your Kehillah, listen to the therapists in the community. And again, it was so interesting to me that this was the first eitzah that he gave as that he felt that needed to be said. So again, an incredible source of wisdom for so many people. I mentioned and I'll conclude with this. I mentioned the last words of the Haftarah in Malachi that we read, and just reading the psukim. I mean, it begins in pasuk K. Brisi hoisaito. My covenant was with him. My covenant was with him. My bris of life and peace, and fear of Hashem and fear for Hashem's name. And again, that this so aptly describes, first of all, his involvement in bris, in entering young babies into the bris, the covenant of Klal Yisrael as a Moel, his Yerushalayim, his ability for shalom, for peace. And then, as I read, Torah emes hoisuk b'fihu, the avlo l'nimtza b'sfasav, the law of truth was in his mouth, the Torah of truth was in his mouth, and dishonesty wasn't found in his lips. His honesty, no dishonesty. V'rabim heishim me'ov, and many he turns away from sin. Again, his ability to connect. I didn't even mention this. I mean, I spoke about his ability to speak to those who are who weren't engaged in classic in filling halacha, in keeping halacha in a fuller way. I mean, he was a kiruv expert without ever having done kiruv. His just ability to connect and find to each person that which they found meaningful and understood. Even now, I mean, people, when they saw that I was going to give these words of Hesped, privileged people wrote to me WhatsApps about their personal encounters with him, and several people who were Bali Tshuva wrote to me and spoke about one of them actually described it. Two of them actually described. They said the most memorable conversation of their life was the 5 minutes they spent with him, where he understood so quickly where they were coming from, what they were going through. And then finally, the last pasuk is Sifsei Kohen Yishmu Das. From the mouth of a Kohen will guard knowledge, and the Torah of Akshem Yipiu, they'll seek Torah from his mouth. Kimalach Hashem Tzvakasu, because he was like Malach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For all of us, obviously, his loss creates a tremendous gap. The purpose of a Hesped, according to one man's almost, is to raise awareness of the gap that we need to step in and fill. Filling the gap of what he achieved, of his Torah. I spoke about his Torah, I spoke about his modesty, his love of Torah, his Mesiras Nefesh, his sacrifice, his personality, his gifts and contributions to the tzibur, his wisdom. The theme of the Haftarah that we read actually in some senses is a negative Haftarah. It speaks about the wear and tear of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu when things get a little weary and a little drained. That's the theme of Malachi, the last of Nevi'im. And therefore I simply want to conclude with the final words of Malachi in which Malachi says, what's the solution to rejuvenation? And it's Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi, Yasher Sevesi Yosef B'chorev, remembering the Torah of Moshe, my servant. And if we could achieve a tiny fraction of the Simchas Torah that Dayan Chanoch had, everything he had really came from his stature as an Oyev Torah. That's where it really emerged from. So I conclude with the words of Malachi, which he speaks about the loss of this kohen and the loss of this connection. But Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi is the way to rejuvenate that. And Hashem, the family of Dayan Chanoch's family, his friends, his Talmidim, his Killer, should find a chama, and above all his Rebbetzin should find comfort in his memory and what he stood for, and in the wonderful family that he left behind. His memory should be a bracha. Okay.